I am Stephanie. I am 55.
I'm Jen. I am 45.
I'm Christina. I'm 33.
I'm Anna. I'm 32 years old.
Hi, I'm Janine. I am 49 years old.
Hi, I'm Dominique. I am 46.
I'm Dee Dee. I'm 60 years old.
And I'm Laura. I am 57 years old.
Welcome back to INTERWOVXN's second season of 2022, featuring conversations centered on sisterhood and, as always, celebrating and supporting women in middle life. We here at INTERWOVXN are excited to exchange support this season with Renaissance Theater Works. Founded and led by women, celebrating 30 years of theater by women for everyone, and is the nation's second oldest professional theater dedicated to gender balance. They produce 3 intimate, moving shows per season in Milwaukee's Harbor District. Check out their website at rtw.com. That's r-t-w.com. And find them on social media. Again, that's rtw.com. In today's episode, join me and my sister Stephanie as we talk about growing up in separate households, parallel childhoods, the gifts and challenges of our age gap, parenting, shared creative joys, and choosing love. Remember to hit subscribe so you can keep coming back, and to visit our website so that you can sign up for our newsletter and access all of our resources. Find us at interwoven.com. That's INTERWOVXN.com.
Hi, I am Stephanie. I am almost 55. I am a Scorpio. I have grown kids, 25 daughter, almost 21-year-old son. So we were kind of empty nesters. I am a product manager for a large bank. Some of my creative outlets, which ironically, I never thought I was a creative person until recently, but I like to do crocheting. I also got into doing the Cricut machine and a whole bunch of other different crafts, which is really fun.
I'm Jen. I am Steph's sister. I am 45. I am a Cancer. I parent an 11-year-old boy. I am a creative professional. I love my home. I love a good story in all forms, whether that's a book or a movie or a play or a conversation. I am a new dog mom in the last year. Absolutely also fell in love with crochet, and I love knitting. So, Steph, I always have felt lucky because you entered into parenthood and a lot of things in life before me. So being that my wonderful niece and nephew are 12 or 13 years older than my child, I always really like your perspective on parenting, and I find that as my child is growing, I'm going to you more and more to find out, like, okay, when your kids were this age, especially with how to navigate technology and time management and activities, I feel super out of my element and sometimes trapped in like ridiculously, maybe detrimentally old school concepts and thinking about the world we live in today and how to navigate that and embrace some of those things. So before we even start talking about the other stuff, starting from today, I just want to say I really appreciate that. And I can always come to you with those questions.
Absolutely.
So this season of the podcast is all about sisterhood, whether it's biological sisters or chosen sisters. And we are biological sisters.
We are.
We are biological half-sisters.
Correct.
Steph, you and I have the same dad and different moms.
Mm-hmm.
I found that thinking about our growing up together story as sisters is kind of fascinating because you lived with your mom and visited dad on the weekends, and you were already 9 when I was a baby. So you had a life well established long before I came along, and I lived with dad and my mom in a 2-parent household. When I was little, man, I lived for the weekends when you would come over.
Yeah, and I did too.
I wanted you there all the time.
And I wanted to be there all the time, too.
I don't think I fully understood what divorce meant, what blended families meant. I knew you lived somewhere else with your mom, but when I was really little, even though I'm pretty sure it was explained to me, but in my head, like, I would always want to go with Dad to pick you up. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I get to see my other mom. Like, right. I assumed because she was your mom that there was also
a connection there.
A connection there. And I loved where you lived, because I lived in a house in the quiet suburbs, and I remember you living on the east side that was more urban and fascinating, and you had pets, and we did not have pets.
We had cats back then.
Yes, and that was exciting. And then I also felt like I just didn't sometimes know how to act. Like I had all this excitement.
And I hated going home, which made me feel bad because my mom did take very good care of me. Totally different lifestyles. It was rough for a single mom to bring up a growing child who I remember my feet grew so much. My mom had little teeny size 5-foot shoes. And I remember I used to love to go into her closet and try on her shoes. And then my feet just kept growing. So it was hard for her to keep up with expenses of having a child alone. She sometimes had to work 3 jobs, and I'd come over to Dad's house. And I remember when you were born, it's just like I never wanted to leave. And there was this Barbra Streisand. Okay, I love Barbra Streisand for everybody. One of her albums, and there was a song on it. It was Jenny was in the name, and I would listen to that over and over and over again. And my mom would be like, "Would you turn that off?" And I'd be blaring and singing it. And I looked forward to coming every weekend and having you to play with. Even the dinner conversations and just sitting and listening and learning. It was quite different households.
It's nice to hear that. Well, the older I get, the more my memories fade, or I have to fill in the blanks.
Yes.
I think a lot more of my memories stem from when I was a little bit older, probably like 6 or 7, and you were in high school. I remember when you went to prom with
my husband.
Yeah. So I met him when I was 6. So to me, he's always been a part of my memory. He's always been my brother. I also remember, usually, I think it only happened a couple times, but we would go in the summer for a week to see our grandma. I only have a couple memories of us going together. And then we didn't start driving until later. I remember being in the back seat with the sheet on it, and like there was no air conditioner in the car. So we got to share a room. And I remember I lived for that, because I used to pretend like if Steph lived with me all the time, then we could share a room. And we could be the sisters that could stay up late and all that stuff. And I think I also too didn't always know how to express myself, and I looked up to you because you were older, so I wanted you to think I was cool.
And I'm a very shy person, so I think I couldn't express myself either the way I wanted to.
And being young on top of it.
And I'm gonna say jealous.
That makes sense. I hadn't thought a ton about that one till I was an adult. I feel like I lived in one world. You lived in at least 2.
And it was hard to know where to fit in. I mean, I think I fit in more with my mom because I was with her most of the time, right? So sometimes I felt very awkward coming to Dad's house, especially as I got older. That was really hard because it used to be, every weekend. So I get to at least spend a couple nights with Dad. And I remember like Sunday night, they would show a Disney movie or Disney show. And I would always be like, oh, this means I have to go home now. I probably was a little snot to my mom because I do remember her young age saying, I hope you have one just like you.
I feel like becoming a parent gives me this whole new perspective of what, especially like my mom and stuff must have thought when I was growing up. I guess I had a really selfish perspective as a child. And I think a lot of kids don't think of their parents as people with lives and perspectives unrelated to them until there's some maturing. But I was always grateful and always conscious, especially as I was older, that it would be natural to feel jealous and to have resentment and confusion. And I was always so grateful that in spite of all of that, you still have always been such an important part of my life. You've shown up for me during some really hard moments in my life. You've always included me, and I love that dearly. And it becomes more and more meaningful too as I see parents aging and know that we do have each other. The beauty of you being a little bit ahead in family life and parenting is that I feel like I can benefit from the wisdom. Like, I'm the parent of an only child. I don't have a comparative, so I'm dumping all my neuroses onto the one.
Well, you're entering a time with him that he doesn't need you as much anymore.
Right.
And that's really hard.
And I wish I could remember where my thoughts were going with our age difference, because it's by no means huge. But now
it is big.
Right?
Scheme of things, like you said, I was almost 10 when you came along, so I had a whole whole
Right.
life. I mean, my kids are 5 years apart. So my daughter got the only child syndrome and all the focus on her when she was young. But then my son got it when he was older because she was off to school.
Your kids are also really close with each other in a way that, like, I don't know too much about, but I know, like, they have a pretty close
They
relationship.
do now.
And
I wouldn't say when they were growing up because the age difference did matter.
occasionally, your son in the summertime when you were working would still come and spend the day with us. When I look back on pictures, your son, when mine was a baby, was the same age as my kid is
Right now.
It's crazy, though, to just now be looking back at those baby pictures and remembering when your son was my son's age and here was mine as this little baby when I was little too. For me, it was so fun, like when I was really little, to have you around. Like, you used to come to my birthday parties and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then I remember when you became a teenager and you became more into your own life, and then things changed and I didn't see you.
You know, went from every weekend to maybe Sundays.
I remember missing you a lot.
So, and
Household.
ironically, I went to the high school right down the street from your house, but I had to take the city bus because I lived on the east side of Milwaukee. So,
Right.
you know, I had like, a 45-minute commute. And I kept thinking, well, my dad's right down that block,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
But no.
It was weird in those ways, like how separate everything stayed. There was still more of a formal feeling.
That's what I regret most, is I feel like we're kind of more formal with each other, and maybe that'll change now as we're older because of the age difference, not living together. So I felt like we drifted apart a lot.
And then on my end of it, when you had settled down and were starting your family, when you lost your mom, I was doing my own thing.
You were rightfully so.
In my early 20s at that point, and it was college and traveling and an off the beaten path living situation. We didn't even talk on the phone. I think I found out about your mom passing when I was placing a weekly call home to let the parents know I was still alive. So yeah, with our age gap, we had like a double up on time apart in a way because of you starting your young adult life. And then when you started family life as an adult,
You were rolling into your
I was
young
rolling
adult.
into that. So I felt like we had a decade and a half or so.
But if you remember when I got married, you were the one I wanted to be my maid of honor.
And that was so sweet. 'Cause
Even
I
though
was
you weren't
15.
old enough to sign the papers.
I know. Oh, and what a good time that was. And I was so excited about that dress. That was amazing.
So you were only 15?
I was only 15.
Oh, wow. I do remember that you couldn't legally sign the papers.
It's been interesting because we had a unique but present childhood origin story, even though we were in separate households. And I think both in our heads had a wish for more time together than we had. It took a little while, I think, to consciously develop that. You also maintained a full-time career while parenting, which I think is amazing. And you have always shown up for your family and your kids, especially. And our schedules were still really offset.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
You were retails.
so I was often working weekends when you were off. So that was hard too, because like now we finally live in the same state. And we live like 20 minutes apart. But
And we
between-
still don't see each other
I know,
enough,
but between
so-
work schedules and family schedules, and like in a weird way, thank goodness we had like a formal structure for getting together, because I think that's what's led us to be able to spend more time together as we age in this next chapter.
You know, changes in my life when I was younger and I had the 2 kids, I thought I had to do it all. And I did do it all. And then recently, and I meant not recently, maybe 5 years or more, I told my husband, it's like, okay, I'll cook dinners, but you get to clean up. And, you know, I'm going to spend more time on me.
I found out I wanted to be able to do it all when I had my baby. I went back to work, but I stepped down from the full-time managerial position that I had to a part-time role. But I quickly found out that even though I was only required to be on the clock part-time, I still had to try and work full-time, basically, on my time off to get my projects done. And I couldn't handle it. I tried for a year and a half to make it work with career and cobbling together childcare, and it was too much. And I chose to take a break and become a stay-at-home mom. That was a blessing and also challenging in ways that I never would have
I always
been
said
able
I would
to
be
guess.
a good stay-at-home mom once the kids were gone. I gave you such kudos for doing that because I could not have been a full-time mom and expect to teach them all the stuff and all the activities, and I don't think I could have ever done that.
I don't know, and I felt like I was some sort of big failure because I wasn't able to do the other thing.
You obviously did a great job.
It's interesting because we had different upbringings, and as parents, we made different choices. I think that all of our kids, it's certainly not perfect, and I also think for me the biggest thing of letting go as a parent is just realizing we all do the best we can, but in the end, my kiddo still has the world looking out for him in ways that aren't up to me. I have to trust that whatever of my mistakes or imperfections might have affected him. I sit around sometimes thinking about what those might be, and I could even be wrong about that. But I have to trust that he'll find the support that he needs for those things when the time is right in his life. And it's not up to me to try to manipulate those either. Certainly being a stay-at-home parent was challenging and wonderful, both in ways that I did not expect. I was lucky because I always did keep my hand in some sort of personal project, and I still do. I am now at the point as he becomes more independent where I think it's reasonable for me moving towards full-time employment again. I'm not sure what that will look like, but I've also noticed in my life, especially throughout the pandemic, it was really nice to have the flexibility of being able to do some independent consulting work for old clients from my first career and then picking up work here and there as it suited me for my second one. But then at some point, as I'm aging, now it's all exhausting. That is way too much. It's enough to juggle and be present for my child as he becomes more independent. I don't want to cobble together 5 things. I would like to narrow it down into consistent money making and then projects that can evolve that are meaningful. I don't know how that will unfold or what that will look like. And I remember feeling like when I made the decision to take a career break and focus on parenthood, I would find myself in a social setting, like talking to other women, and when they would ask, and what do you do? If I said, oh, well, I'm staying home right now with my son, people would be like, oh, and they'd walk away.
Wow.
That was really interesting too for me to have a lot of time to let go of my career with self-definition, but I didn't realize how hard that would be. I would make to-do lists every day, and I would put the dumbest things on to-do lists, like make dinner or get dressed. Yeah. I was so used to running my life with Outlook. And in the beginning, I think some of it helped me, but then like anything, you know, when your tools turn into a weapon against yourself, and it was just making me crazy.
I was envious of those women that they could spend all that time with their kids, and here I am schlepping them to daycare and doing whatever, but yet I had those people that would help me. I was so grateful that, you know, I had to leave my kids home alone. So I was really worried about that. Call me when you get there, and that's before the fancy cell phones where I could track where they are, and I'd panic if it's like 3:20 and I hadn't heard anything, so I'm calling, and then I felt so guilty because here I am, I'm at work, and I had to work.
I don't know though, and like there's a lot of times it's not like I was a joy for my son to be around as a stay-at-home mom. Like I was a little too isolated and a little too nutty sometimes. Too, I had friends in the neighborhood where we could get out and just being around another adult, being able to take him places. That's why he and I still love to have adventures together. We go out a lot. He is used to spending a lot of his time around other adults. So really nice too to see him spending more time with peers. The point, I guess, is you can always think the grass is always greener and look at what you didn't do or what you did or what you think you should have or whatever. And in both cases, I'm like, yeah, just because my son and I spent a lot of time together when he was little, like that was not all quality time. There was a lot of television helping.
There was a lot of television helping in my house, too.
There was a lot of other people helping. Nobody can do it alone. I always felt like I wasn't doing something right. I felt like I should have been working more. It should have felt easier. I wouldn't trade any of it, but couldn't have done it alone.
And there was a point in my career where I was without a job for almost 2 years. But it was 2 full summers, which was the best summers both my kids and I had. Before that, they had to go to Y camp every week in the summer. I hated it. But yeah, I mean, that was the best 2 years.
And that's one of the things I loved most about the freedom that I had with my schedule with the summers. I have such gratitude and such amazing memories of the flexibility from the summers. Is there anything that you would like to share with me about your middle life?
Middle life. You know, I guess you don't notice a lot of it until you've kind of passed it. So one of my big milestones was to make it to 54. My mom died when she was 53. No, she was 52. When I turned 53, I'm like, holy crap, look at how much my mom's missing.
I'm definitely perimenopausal and grateful for people I've met who have brought the awareness to me.
Yeah, and I don't think I knew, because I didn't have my mom. She was probably just going through it or just finishing, and I don't know if I really understood what was happening to me.
Well, you know what? It's funny, though, is that I remember like around 37 or 38 for me is when I started having physical things change. I remember going to my doctor because I would think that, you know, maybe I had a condition or something, like maybe I have lupus or maybe I have fibromyalgia. And I would go, and I felt really lucky that the doctors I went to would listen to me and they'd check everything out. I had one woman I had gone to for years, a nurse practitioner, and she's like, you know, in the medical community for women and women's health, you don't always get told that there's a name for it. Menopause isn't something that just happens in a 6-month time frame. It actually starts now, and what you're experiencing is the onset of hormonal fluctuations. And I think at first I was always writing that off, almost because I didn't want to have to think about that process or admit that that's what was happening. Now I'm really grateful to be able to talk about it, because for a while you just think you're crazy, or you think you're the only one, or...
And I don't remember having anybody to talk to now.
Yeah, I'm not sure our moms did. When your second was born, how old were you?
So I was almost 29 when my daughter was born. I had a miscarriage. Well, that was right around the time my mom got sick, though. So I think I miscarried in October, and my mom got her diagnosed in December, and then she was gone by March. Then I had my son, who is almost 4 years. God, how old was I? This is a lot of math.
I noticed that I asked you to figure it out. I couldn't be doing it.
I have no idea how old I was.
Okay.
I must have been
35.
34,
Okay.
35.
So we weren't that different then, because I had my son when I was 32. 32 or 33. Okay.
Well, and I had trouble conceiving,
Okay.
so we were just looking into like fertility type of my doctor was kind of like, just, you know, relax a little, and then it happened, right? So
Do you think you felt nervous after the miscarriage?
I did, and I was very nervous the whole pregnancy until I got to a certain point, whereas my daughter, I was like scared the whole time.
Yeah.
It was just foreign, you know.
Felt foreign. I remember it was difficult. It felt physically difficult. I had a lot of just like discomfort and bad morning sickness.
And my thyroid went when I was pregnant. I think we were both kind of just borderline, where they start saying you're a higher risk pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's at like 35-ish.
Yeah.
If your body can bounce back better in the 20s, which it did with my daughter, I never bounced back after my son.
I'm certainly grateful I was the age I was, but it would have been sort of cool to know sooner after childbirth that like some of these overlapping changes would be considered normal.
My
Rebounding
daughter
from
was
the
a
sleepless
horrible
night.
sleeper. She didn't sleep through the night for the first 5 years.
I feel like that's how my son was, for sure.
Whereas my son was just putting him in bed awake, and he would just go right to sleep.
Not mine. I was exhausted. We both were in the same chair because you gave me your glider when
that's
I had.
true.
So we were both probably propped up and asleep in that chair. Now it seems like so long ago. But I am really glad that now, as both of our children and our families become more independent, you're ahead of me on that game for sure. You're at the point where you're having more freedom, maybe. At least that's how I'm perceiving it.
But yet, I had a huge hole that I was missing something.
That grief that comes with
Yeah.
the change.
When my son, the youngest, went to college, well, it was such a crazy time. It was 2020, right? He had to finish his high school year at home, and then he had to go to college during the pandemic.
It gives me strength, though, because I do think sometimes when I get to the point where I feel overwhelmed by basically my own choices to schedule things and do things, I'm like, Steph could do this. Could do it for 2 kids. She could do it. I can do it. It actually really inspired me. I am not really much of a joiner or a doer. I hold back a lot from that, but really seeing you stay involved and how that strengthened your relationship with your kids has inspired me to say yes and being willing to participate.
I think that was the best thing because I told you I'm pretty shy. I don't think if I wouldn't have volunteered, I wouldn't have made the friends along the way and felt so part of a community. I think that's the number one thing is find something you enjoy doing, and even if it's an hour a day or hour a week, make sure you set some time for you. I don't think a lot of women realize they should do that.
Right.
Because we feel guilty.
Or we're doing for others.
Yes, but you have to take care of you first.
As we age, how would we like to dig deeper into our sisterhood?
Well, I'd like to be more involved in your son's stuff. Tell me when he's got his stuff going on. I do love to go see all that kind of stuff.
And sometimes, honestly, I forget to ask because I assume you're just so busy with your own kids and your own stuff.
But I'm not.
I don't even remember to put it out there, you know?
Definitely. And when your son's going through stuff, call me, text me, whatever. I'll talk you off the ledge.
I love it that even though we're inconsistent, I love our dinner dates together.
Yeah, I'd like to do more of that.
Been able to go out. I would really like to do that. I have huge fantasies of coming over to your basement while you're making cricket
that would
stuff.
be fun.
And
so
I have yarn and I'm making my granny squares or my hats, chatting, and there's crafting time together.
That would be fun.
Because I think it's really interesting.
I think we could do a project.
And I think it's really interesting, like, that we both have ended up with those types of personal loves and passions as we've aged. I love that our own natures, our own creative natures have given us a common thread. It would be really fun just do something fun together.
If there was one thing you could ask of your sister in the next chapter, what would it be?
What would we ask of each other?
I want to see you more. I think that's just we both have to make a bigger effort to spend more time together.
And that would be mine too, to spend time together. And I think the other one thing is how you and I can both show up for our folks as they're aging, you know, and I really appreciate how brave you've always been, like sharing your true feelings with me about how you felt about our upbringing and how now going forward we're adults making our own choices to keep that courage and keep sharing with me about that family stuff too.
I'm so blessed to have your mom in my life.
She is lucky to have you too.
Yeah, I mean, so that had to have been so hard. Now thinking back, of course I was a 6-year-old little girl, I think, when she came into my life. To come in and have this instant family and to move into a home that was once somebody else's, and how strong she was to get through it all.
Blended families are never easy, but I feel really lucky that the elders in our collective families were able to do what they did, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here having this talk together. I really do feel grateful that the best everybody could do was so good, even though it was not perfect and often awkward and confusing. And to remember too, we were all kids, you know, we came by whatever we came by honestly, and we did the best we could with that.
We did a darn good job at it too.
Definitely. And I really appreciate that outreach comes more naturally too. For me, I don't avoid it. I just don't think to do it. But I feel like you're the one that hosts the family parties and you're willing to get everybody together. But that would be the other thing I would ask of you, is to just keep working with me to help them.
Yes.
As they age.
What I need you to do though is just to say, Steph, have you called the folks lately?
Right.
Because I'm bad with that. Okay. I mean, so that's another thing. And we've not had the really close relationship that you have with them. I never lived with them. I know they're always there for me, and I hope they know I'm always there for them. I mean, it's easy for me not to call them for a long time.
And sometimes I feel like I wish I had more time and availability to give, because I think they would both like more time now, especially after the pandemic. Just a shifting in perspective there, and help keep me accountable to my place as a daughter, and that's important right now before all that time has passed. And we've missed opportunities to be together still as their children. I need help with that.
I do too. So we're going to have to to figure something out.
I love you so much. And
I
thank
do
you.
too.
Thank you for doing this and having this conversation.
I love you too.
Talk to you soon, Steph.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We invite you to hit subscribe and to keep coming back each week for a new empowering conversation between sisters. We look forward to seeing you at our website, where you'll find our newsletter and other amazing resources. Visit interwoven.com. That's INTERWOVXN.com to sign up today. This show's copyright is October of 2022. We want to thank our sponsors and affiliates, as well as our producers, Teresa Kopak, Rebecca Jankowski, and Jen Gilmore of Soundfort Studios. All original music was created and performed by Colleen Webb.